Barakatha Yahweh, Barakatha Yahweh Shai, all praises, honor, and glory be unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kodash. Double honors to our apostles and elders at Great Millstone who taught us his truth and who rule well. Peace, love, salutation, and mercy be unto the hopeful elect. In this video, I'm going to cover the Hellenization of the Israelites, the time period in which Israelites adapted to the customs, the religion, the culture, the manner, the lifestyle of Greeks, in which Israelites became Greek citizens. They spoke the Greek language. And they became Greeks outwardly. They became Greeks outwardly. Which means that they followed after the mannerisms of the Greeks. And after their philosophy. Because an Israelite cannot physically become a Greek in regards to race. Their race is still going to be an Israelite because your race is determined by your father. And we find that out by way of scriptures like Acts, the 7th chapter. In the 8th verse, it says, "And he gave them the covenant of circumcision. And so Abraham begat Isaac and circumcised him the 8th day. And Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat the 12 patriarchs." And when you get into the word patriarch, it's a compound word. Which the word patriarch goes back to the word father. And also the word archeo. Which the word archo, to be a chief, to be a leader, to rule. The same equivalent as if you were going to the Hebrew and you would look up the word prince. So the rulers of the nations and the ones that determine the nationality of a nation is the father. And the word for patria actually goes back to pater. And the word pater is where you get the word father from. So it says generator or male ancestor, either the nearest ancestor, father, or of the corporal nature, natural father. It says both parents, but the pater is the father. It says a more remote ancestor, the founder of a family or tribe, progenitor of a people, forefather. So Abraham is called Jacob and David, father and example, ancestors, forefathers, founders of a nation. So your nationality is determined by your father. It's not determined by your mother. But it's determined by your father. That's who plants the seed. That's who is the progenitor. Which that word pro meaning forth, and the word generate or genitor. That goes into a gene. Which means to give birth. So a man doesn't physically give birth, but a man does plant the seed within a woman, making it possible for that woman to become pregnant. And whatever that child is, its nationality is determined by the father. So an Israelite cannot be a Greek by way of race, by way of nationality, but an Israelite can receive Greek citizenship and also act and imitate and keep the customs of the Greeks and also speak the Greek language. For an example, I'll give another example. Now Paul was an Israelite. The scripture says that he was a Hebrew of the Hebrews, which I'm going to grab that within the book of Philippians. The 3rd chapter, and I'll start at about the 4th verse. It says, "Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh that he hath whereof that he might trust in the flesh, I am more circumcised on the 8th day, of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, and Hebrew of the Hebrews, as touching the law of the a Pharisee, all right, which is basically saying that he kept the law, perfectly. But as you see, it states that he was of the stock of Israel, and out of Israel he was of the tribe of Benjamin. All right, but Paul goes on the record of saying that he was a Roman. Now, does that mean that Paul's national ancestry or his race was that of Rome? No, that just means that Paul had Roman citizenship. All right. This is Acts 22 and 24. It says the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle, and he bade that he should be examined and scored by scourging, that they might know whereon they cried so against him. And as Paul as they bound him with thongs, Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for thou to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? And when the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed what thou doest. This man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? And he said, yeah. The chief captain answered, with a great sum attained I this freedom. And Paul said, but I was freeborn. So Paul was born within a province, that was called Tarsus. And you find that out by going to Acts. And let's see, you can go to Acts 22 and 3. And Paul says, I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the Father, and was zealous towards the Most High, as ye all are this day. So Paul was born within a Roman province, and that gave him Roman citizenship. All right, so you have Israelites that were born within Greek provinces, and thus they had Greek citizenship. And some of them even went to the extent of taking on the manner and the customs and the language of these Greeks, and thus teaching these things into their children, and their children believing that they were Greeks. And you have other examples, where Israelites were forced into keeping the customs of the Greeks under the penalty of death. Now you have something called Americanization, or Americanization. And it says, is the influence American culture and business has on other countries outside of the United States, including their media, cuisine, business practices, popular culture, technology, or political techniques. The term has been used since at least 1907, while not necessarily a pejorative term. It is most often used by critics in the target countries who are against the influences. Americanization has become more prevalent since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989 through 1981, and especially since the advent of the widespread high-speed internet. Used starting in the mid-2000s in Europe, and in recent years, there are growing concern about Americanization through Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Apple, and Uber. Among many other United States tech industry companies, European governments have increasingly expressed concern regarding privacy issues, as well as the antitrust and taxation issues regarding the new American giants. The Wall Street Journal in 2015 reported deep concerns in Europe's highest policy circle about the power of the U.S. technology companies. Within the United States, the term Americanization refers to the process of acculturation by immigrants or annexed populations. So as you can see, the word Americanization, is dealing with the influence, all right, that America, which is a dominant culture, has upon a less inferior culture, all right, or these other countries in which, all right, certain technology or companies, all right, whether it be culture through movies, all right, through someone going abroad and establishing businesses. All right, there's a culture of America that's being spread throughout the four corners of the world. Now, this is a modern sense of something that happened to the Israelites and also what happened to the well-known world at a particular time, all right, in ancient history. All right, but that time was called the Hellenization period. And the Hellenization period was a period of time where men, all right, which were Edomites, all right, which had started from Hell's Point, all right, with Alexander the Greek, when he went on his conquest, all right, to conquer the well-known world at the time, all right, brought to those regions Greek customs, and especially under his four generals, all right, which was Lysimachus, Cassander, all right, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. All right, they helped to spread and forward that Hellenization, all right, or Hellenism, all right, which was those Greek philosophies, all right, the Greek culture and the Greek lifestyles. All right, and through Ptolemy and Seleucus, which they were warned over Palestine, especially through them, all right, they helped to Hellenize, all right, the state of Israel at that time. All right, through forcing them through the penalty of death, all right, to comply and to convert over, or rather to conform to the ways of the heathen. Now, the definition of Hellenization, all right, and if you want to look up the Americanization definition that was read, all right, that came out of Wikipedia. All right, the definition for Hellenization is also going to come out of Wikipedia. It says Hellenization, other British spellings are Hellenization or Hellenism, are the historical spread of ancient Greek culture, religion, all right, and to a lesser extent, language over the foreign peoples conquered by Greeks or brought into the sphere of influence, particularly during the Hellenistic period following the campaign of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. The result of Hellenization was the element of Greek origin combined in various forms and degrees with local elements, and these Greek influences spread from the Mediterranean basin as far east as modern-day Pakistan. In modern times, Hellenization has been associated with the adoption of modern Greek culture and the ethnic and cultural homogenization of Greece. So as you can see, there's a similarity between what America is doing and how they're spreading their culture throughout the world, and also how the ancient Greeks spread their culture throughout the world, in which these people that begin to call themselves Greeks, they wasn't the original Greek. All right. Greece actually had a civilization prior to Esau Edom invading and taking it over. And you read about that when you go into Genesis, or the 10th chapter, verse 1. It says, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshach and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Rephath and Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elishah and Tarshish, Kittim and Dodanim." Now, when you go into the name of Javan, the name of Javan, all right, in the Hebrew is Yawan. It reads Javan, Ionia, or Greece. A son of Japheth, the grandson of Noah. Greece, Ionia, Ionians, location of the descendants of Javan. These were the people that were inhabiting those regions prior to Esau Edom, are invading those regions, taking them over and forcing those people out of their lands and taking on their civilization and their culture. That's why when you go into scriptures like the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter, and you read concerning the vision of Daniel, all right, beginning at verse 2. This is Daniel 8 and 2. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, and there stood before the river a ram which had two horns, and the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Which is speaking about the Persians and the Medes. I saw a ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that can deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, behold, the goat came from the west, and he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had had a notable horn, between his eyes. And he came to the ram, that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram and brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and it came up four notable ones, toward the four winds of heaven. So that he goat, represents Greece, and the Greeks, which is going to state, once I jump down, to verse 20, is going to explain the whole thing. Which upon that he goat, it had one notable horn within the center, and that center that notable horn within the center represent the first king that reigned over Grecia, which was Alexander the Greek. Now, were they originally Grecians? No. Alexander's father, Philip of Macedon, Salakia, he was the one that united, all of those Greek nations together. But he came out of Macedon. And the Macedonians, their roots go all the way back to the king of Agag, which the king of Agag, his nationality goes back to the tribe of Amalek. So even the so-called white men that took over that region, they're not the original Grecians. They're not the original Greeks. But reading on, and this is Daniel 8 and 20, it says, the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Midian and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And that great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So when you read the king of Grecia, what word comes up? The word there is Yawan. So what happened was, these Edomites went up into that region, and they took over that land of Greece. And they destroyed and took down the Etruscans, and they took over their culture. They adapted it to themselves. Now, when they went throughout the whole world, beginning with Alexander, the Greek, which we're going to get into that history within the book of First Maccabees, they brought with them their culture, and they brought that culture unto the people that they conquered, all of the lands that they had conquered. Now, this is First Maccabees 1 and 1. It says, and it happened after Alexander, the son of Philip, the Macedonian. So Alexander was actually a Macedonian, and not even a Macedonian. He was an Amalekite. Macedonia is just the region in which they lived in. It says, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, the king of the Persians and the Medes, and he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up, and he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. All right, so this is the beginning of that Hellenization period. All right, in which these Edomites who were ruling through Greece, all right, they spread that culture throughout the well-known world at that time. It says, and after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Whereupon he called his servants and such as were honorable and been brought up with him, which were his friends, that were brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So he parted his kingdom to his 4 generals, Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. And so Alexander reigned 12 years, then died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. All right, and there came out of them a wicked root, surnamed Antiochus Epiphanes, a son of Antiochus the king, and who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned 137 years, of the kingdom of the Greeks. And when he reigned, him and Ptolemy, they were pretty much going at it over the state of Palestine, as they call it within secular history, but really it's the land of Israel. And this wicked man Antiochus, he did wicked things unto the children of Israel. He even set up what was known as the abomination that maketh desolate. Now, during his reign, you had wicked men, or a wicked man, as well as others, who took it upon themselves to adapt to the customs and the way and the lifestyle of the Greeks. As I'm going to read within the 2nd Maccabees, the 4th chapter. It says, but after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason the brother of Onias labored underhand to be the high priest, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Besides this, he promised to assign 150 if he might have license to set him up a place of exercise, and for the training up of the youth, in the fashions of the heathens, and to write them of Jerusalem of the name of Antiochians, which when the king had granted, he got into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashions. And the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid, he took away, and putting down the governments which were according to the law, and he brought up new customs against the law. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat. Now such was the height of Greek fashion, and increased of heathenish manners, through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly wretch, and no priest, and no high priest. The priest had no courage to serve, any more at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifice, hastened to be partaker of the unlawful allowance, in the place of exercise after the game of discus called them forth, notwithstanding by the honor of their fathers, not setting by the honor of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all. So you had Israelites who adapted to the customs and the language and the mannerisms, and the values and the principles and the philosophy of the Greeks, thus becoming Hellenized. And another thing that they did, going back to the book of 1st Maccabees, All right, and going to the 11th verse, it reads, it says, in those days went out wicked men of Israel. All right, in those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go, all right, and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this is the same event that I was reading about within Second Maccabees, the 4th chapter, with Jason. It says, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so far within, they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. So our people at some point in time were following the customs of the heathens. All right, they were following that Hellenism, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. So what did it say? It said that they made themselves uncircumcised. Now, I just want to grab this within, all right, the book of First Corinthians, all right, just so that you can understand how they made themselves uncircumcised, Salakia. This is First Corinthians 7 and 18. It says, is any man called being circumcised? Let him not become uncircumcised. Is any man called in uncircumcision? Let him not be circumcised. So there was a time period when our people, all right, because according to the Greeks, they looked at body mutation as being something that was despised upon. It was frowned upon, all right, to alter the natural look of the body. So they will mock, all right, the Israelites, as well as, all right, that was a clear and easy way to spot someone that was a Jew through circumcision. So if you were found circumcised, or if you were found professing yourself to be a Jew, all right, you were punished, or you were penalized, all right, by way of death, or you were constrained by the threat of death, that if you did not conform and to become a Greek, all right, through following that Hellenism, all right, if you didn't become Hellenized, that you would die. So this is a pispeo, and it says to draw on. All right, let him not draw on his foreskin, because this is what Israelites, did, or some Israelites did. They will pull on their foreskin to the point where their skin will go back to covering their gland to make them look uncircumcised. So when they would become naked and wrestling in the gymnasiums, all right, they will look like Greeks within the flesh. All right, it says, efface the mark of circumcision by recovering with the foreskin, become uncircumcised. And you know how painful that shit would be to pull on the foreskin, all right, so that you will appear uncircumcised when you're naked. All right, that has to be an excruciating thing, but our people was going through those type of acts just so that they can appear, all right, to be Greeks within the flesh, or to appear to be uncircumcised in the flesh. All right, so Israelites became heathens, and yes, an Israelite can become a heathen. All right. All right, by way of leaving themselves uncircumcised and also following after paganism, all right, following after the ways of the Greeks. Now, that doesn't mean that they're no longer an Israelite, but in their actions and in their deeds, they became heathenish. So this is Matthew's, the 18th chapter, verse 15. It says, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. And if he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. And if he will not hear thee, all right, then take with thee 1 or 2 more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, all right, tell it into the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be as a heathen man and a publican. All right, so let's find out what the heathen man is, which the word there within Greek would be ethnikos. And it says adapted to the genus or customs of a people, peculiar to a people national, suited to the manners or language of foreigners, strangers, foreign. All right, in the New Testament, savoring the nature of pagans, aliens to the worship of the true God, all right, heathenish, of the pagan, the Gentile. So if you neglected, all right, to hear the church, all right, then you were cast off. You were rejected. You relinquished your rights. All right, your rights were conceded, which means that you were no longer a fellow citizen or fellow servant. All right, but you were cast off as someone that was of another nation or form. All right, so you were looked at as by your own nation as someone that was considered a heathen. All right, which that word ethnikos also goes into someone that adapted to the ways of another nation. So you had Israelites, all right, that were adapting to the ways of another nation. All right, they took on that Greek philosophy, thus becoming Hellenized. All right, now another scripture, all right, that pretty much highlights the whole ordeal of what was going on through that Hellenization period is the book of First Maccabees, all right, the sixth chapter, Second Maccabees, the sixth chapter, which reads, it says, not long after the king sent an old man of Athens, all right, to compel the Jews to depart from the law of their fathers and not to live after the laws of God. All right. It says, and to pollute the temple of Jerusalem and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympius, and that in Gerizim, all right, of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place, which you had heathens that were dwelling in that place. All right, but there's a particular history where a man wanted to be high priest, all right, a Levite wanted to be high priest. So he went unto a heathen, all right, that was in charge over that region, all right, which gave him permission to build a temple within Mount Gerizim. All right, and a lot of the Israelites that were cast off, all right, because they were considered or looked at as heathens within Jerusalem, and they couldn't go to that temple, and they were pretty much chased out of the lands. They fled into Mount Gerizim, all right, and they were going into this temple, all right, that was set up within Mount Gerizim, all right, and those people that were within that region, all right, were Sumerians, all right, as well as, you know, a mixture of Sumerians and Israelites, all right, in which, all right, those Sumerians of that region willingly accepted, all right, these terms, and to call the temple that was in Mount Gerizim, which was not the actual temple that you were supposed to worship at, being an Israelite, although Israelites were doing so. They called that temple, all right, the temple of Jupiter, the defender of strangers. It says, the coming in of the mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with riot and revelings by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuits of the holy places. All right, straight up just defiling the temple, man. And besides that, brought in things that were not lawful. The altar also was filled with profane things, all right, which the law forbiddeth. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath day, all right, or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all a Jew. So if you couldn't profess yourself a Jew, all right, you were antagonized, all right, you were harassed, and you were forced under bitter constraint, all right, to sacrifice and to do certain things that were unlawful. And if you didn't do those things, all right, then they would kill you. All right, so many different Jews, all right, accepted the terms of these, all right, or under these Hellenes, Salakia, thus becoming Hellenists or Hellenistas. It says, in the day of the king's birth, all right, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifice, and when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivory. Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighboring cities of the heathens by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifice. And whosoever would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. Now, what does it mean to conform? All right, let's grab the word for conform. The word there for conform means to comply with rules, standards, or laws of a person behaving according to the socially acceptable conventions or standards. So within this time period, the socially acceptable conventions or standards would be the way of the Greeks, all right, which at that time was the dominant culture, all right, which they were forcing our people through the penalty of death to accept, all right, their way and their lifestyle. All right, but then you also had some Israelites that were happy, all right, to accept their lifestyles. All right, and they joyed in following after the way of the heathen. All right, so these are making themselves into, you know, not Greeks by way of race, all right, but Greeks by way of following those customs. All right, they became Hellenized. All right, thus they became Greeks. All right, so you can't become a Greek by way of race because your race is going to be whatever your forefather was. All right, but you can follow the ways of the heathen. All right, and thus that will make you like a heathen. So this is what happened to our people. But then also you had Israelites that were scattered throughout Greek provinces. All right, and being there, all right, you had Israelite men that would have sex with Greek women. All right, and then their sons would have sex with Greek women. All right, and then it would breed out the color. All right, but through their nationality, their race is determined by their father. So they're still Israelites, although they don't look like Israelites. So when you go into the New Testament and you read about certain Greeks receiving salvation through the belief upon Yahweh Shai, all right, that's speaking about Israelites, all right, who are coming back, all right, into the truth through Yahweh Shai, man. All right, it's not speaking about, you know, other nationalities or, you know, other races of people, all right. So this is coming out of the Blue Letter Bible, all right. This is the dictionaries, which I'm looking up Grecians and Greeks. But I'm going to jump down to a particular part in this. And I'm going to just read this. And really, because they don't do such a bad job of breaking it down. But I'm going to go through here and I'm going to pick out the bones. All right. And keep the meat. It says in the New Testament English version of the Bible attempts to distinguish between our Hellenes, which is rendered Greeks, and Hellenistai, which is rendered Grecians or Grecian Jews. Now you had Jews that were amongst the Greek province and they spoke the Greek language, but they knew that they were Israelites and they kept those Israelite customs. But then you also had Israelites that were scattered amongst the Greek provinces, all right, and they didn't know that they were Israelites and they kept the Greek customs. All right, instead of keeping those Israelite customs. So a Grecian is what? It's a Greek-speaking Jew. And it says, or in the Revised Version margin, Hellenist. All right, which it gives Acts 6:1, which under Acts 6:1, it says, in those days, when the number of the disciples were multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because the widows were neglected in the daily ministration. And it also gives Acts 9:29. It says, and he spake boldly in the name of the Lord Yahweh Shai and disputed against the Grecians, but they went about to slay him. So he was speaking against Israelites, all right, that spoke Greek. It says these later were Jews of the dispersion who spoke Greek. See Hellenism or Hellenists as distinguished from Palestinian Jews, all right, which were Jews that dwelt within the land of Israel. It says, but since many of the latter also spoke Greek by preference, all right, because during this time, just like within the world right now, it's beneficial for you to know English, because a lot of the businesses and a lot of business that you will conduct it will be conducted with English speaking countries. So it will be beneficial for you to know Greek. And that's the reason why Paul spoke both Hebrew and Greek. All right, because he was within a Greek province, and within that province, it was beneficial to know that Greek language. The distinguished could, in no sense, be absolute. Indeed, in John 7 and 35, the dispersion among the revised version margin Greeks of the Greeks can hardly refer to any but Grecian Jews. So when you go to the book of John, the 7th chapter, verse 35, where it reads, "Then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles?" Actually, when you go into that word Gentile, the word there is Greek. So it should say, will he go unto the dispersed amongst the Greeks and teach the Greeks? So will he go into those Israelites of diaspora, all right, who spoke Greek, and teach the Israelites of that region, that either spoke Greek or were following the Greekish customs, all right, the Greekish, speaking the Greekish language, following the Greek philosophy, following their values, their way of life. Reading on, it says Hellenistai, although Hellenes is used. And in John 12 and 20, the Greeks Hellenes, who went up to worship at the feast of the Passover, were almost certainly Grecian Jews, Hellenistai. And the one thing that proves that in John 12 and 20, because they went up to keep the Passover. All right, when you go into Exodus, the 12th chapter, all right, a stranger, all right, or a foreigner, they can't keep the Passover. Someone that's in the car, and then the car is the Hebrew way of saying foreigner. All right, now if you were a gar, all right, which means that you were a stranger to Israel because you didn't live in the land, all right, but you had rights, all right, as an Israelite, because you were an Israelite living in another province, all right, or in another country, all right, you were able to keep the Passover. But someone that was a Nakar, someone that was foreign to Israel, a stranger, they couldn't keep the Passover. So these Greeks, within John the 12th chapter, verse 20, are actually Israelites. It says, who went up to worship at the feast of the Passover were almost certainly Grecian Jews, Hellenistai. Thus, while English versions of the Bible consistently renders Hellenes with Greeks, we are not by that render apprised of the real character of the people so designated. This difficulty is aggravated by the fact already noted in connection with the Old Testament Apocrypha, that in consequence of the spread of the Hellenism, the term Hellenes was applied not only to such as were of Hellenic descent, but also to all those who had appropriated the language of of Greece as a universal means of communication, and the ideas and customs collectively known as Hellenism. All right, so these people, went through these regions, these Edomites, who took on that culture of Javan, of Yawan. All right, they went beginning with Alexander, and later with his 4 generals throughout that well-known region, spreading Hellenism, upon people, that would accept it. They would do it through force, but then you had people that would willingly accept it. And they begin to speak those languages. They begin to follow their ideas, their customs, their values, their principles, their way of life, their philosophy. So this was a Hellenization period. And the Israelites were not, they didn't go unaffected by this time period. So a lot of Israelites became Hellenized. So when you go in the New Testament and you read about the Greeks receiving salvation, when you read about the Gentiles, these are actually Israelites. These are not non-Israelite people, but these are actually Israelites, because remember, salvation is for Israel. When you go into the scriptures, it tells you that salvation is for Israel. Now this is 1 Corinthians 1 and 22 through 24. It says, for the Jews require a sign, the Greeks seek after wisdom. All right, but we preach Mashiach crucified, unto the Jews a stumbling block, and unto the Greeks foolishness. All right, so those Greeks within that particular verse would be Israelites. All right, Romans 10 and 12, it says, for there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord is over all right, and is rich unto all that call upon him. Why? Because these Greeks are actually Israelites. All right, they're Jews as well. They just either speak Greek, you know, or at some point in time they followed after the Greek customs and the way of life and spoke Greek. But through the preaching of Yahushua, they're coming back to the truth. All right, Romans 1 and 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Mashiach, for it is power of the Most High unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Greek first, and also to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. All right, this is talking about Israelites, man. Acts 20 and 21, testifying both to the Jews and also to the Greeks, repentance towards the Most High, all right, and faith towards our Lord Yahushua. You know, so with that, you know, I hope that this lesson has been edifying, all right? And you're going to find out that salvation is not for anyone else, all right? That salvation is only for the children of Israel, all right? And through Yahushua, all right, we're being brought back into the graces of the Most High Heavenly Father, just like they were back then. All right, all of these Israelites that were Hellenized, all right, that went through that Hellenization period, all right, and fell away, and a lot of them were following the customs of the Greeks and taught their children to do so. But when that gospel was preached, all right, they began to come back. Like, for an example, you had within Acts the 16th chapter, you had Timotheus, all right, Timothy, all right, whose father was a Greek, but his mother was a Jewish. Now, when you go into it, it makes sense that his father was an Israelite. And one thing that makes sense, I'm going to read this first. This is Acts 16 and 1. It says, then came he to Derbe and Lystra, and behold, a certain disciple was there named Timotheus, the son of a certain woman, which was a Jewish and believed, but his father was a Greek. All right, which was well reported of by the brethren that were in Lystra and Iconium. All right, here would Paul have to go forth with him, and he took and circumcised him because of the Jews which were in those quarters, for they knew at all that his father was a Greek. So why would Paul circumcise, all right, someone whose father is a Greek, knowing that circumcision is only for Israel? You know, in which Paul knew that the father determined the nationality. And one thing that lets you know that Paul knew that, all right, is when you go to Romans 1 and 3, it says, concerning his son Yahushua Mashiach, our Lord, which was made of the seed of David according to the flesh. Now, when you go into the word for seed, now remember the book of Romans is written by who? It's written by Paul. When you go into the word for seed, the word there is sperma, which means what? All right, metaphor, a seed, an example, a residue, all right, of a few survivors reserved as the germ of the next generation, just as the seed is kept from the harvest from growing. The semen viral, the product of this semen, seed, children, are offspring, progeny. So Yahushua, whom the world really called Jesus Christ, all right, he was the progeny or the offspring of David. All right, which he came out of David's seed or bloodline. All right, through Joseph, which was of the bloodline of David. So Paul knew that the father determined the nationality. So therefore, why would he circumcise someone that's a Greek? All right, if this man was actually a Greek and circumcision is only for Israel. That means that his father would have had to been an Israelite, even though his father was following the customs of the Greeks, probably shaving his head bald, shaving off his beard, wearing a toga, making himself uncircumcised, following after the philosophies and the culture, and the values and the principles, and even speaking the language of the Greeks. But his mother was a believer. She believed, and she taught Timothy. So you had Israelites that followed the ways of the Greeks. You had Israelites that were Hellenized. They were still Israelites by way of race, but they were Hellenized. And these Israelites that were Hellenized and that followed the ways of the Gentiles, they were cut off from their people. But through the belief upon Yahushua, they were being brought back. That's the reason why it states this in Ephesians 2:11. It says, "Wherefore remember that ye being in times past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called circumcision in the flesh, made by hands." So you can't in times past be a Gentile, but then not be a Gentile anymore. If you're a Gentile, you're still a Gentile because your nationality is whatever your father is. So these were Israelites that were following the ways of the Gentiles, who left themselves uncircumcised and didn't keep that oath, as it was given to us as an ordinance within the law, within the covenant, that we were to circumcise ourselves, and that if we didn't circumcise ourselves, we'll be cut off from our people. It says that at that time you were without Mashiach, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. But now in Mashiach, Yahushua, ye who sometimes were afar off are made nigh through the blood of Yahushua. Because within Yahushua there's neither circumcision or neither uncircumcision. But through your faith in Yahushua that puts you within the grace of the Most High, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandment contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain a new man, so making peace. Because that ordinance in the flesh was to be circumcised. If you wasn't circumcised, you were cut off from your people. It says, and that he might reconcile, which means to bring back, both unto the Most High in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, and came and preached peace to you which were afar off, and to them that were nigh. For through him we both have access to one Spirit and to the Father. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints, and of the household of the Most High, and are built up and foundation upon the foundation, of the apostles and the prophets, Yahushua Mashiach himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto a holy temple in the Lord, in whom ye are also builded together for a foundation of the Most High through the Spirit. Now, when you go into the word for fellow citizen, the word there is
Strong's G 4847. Sympalites,
which means possessing the same citizenship, with others, a fellow citizen of Gentiles, as received into the communion of the saints of the people consecrated to the Most High. So these are not actually Gentiles. These are actually Israelites who are coming back and receiving citizenship all over again, through the faith and the belief upon Yahushua. That's the reason why you got Romans, the 11th chapter, that speaks about the tree or the wild olive branch being grafted back in. That wild olive branch couldn't be grafted back in unless it was part of that tree before. Olive, or unless they were, Israelites. You can't graft the apple tree with the olive tree. It ain't gonna work. So you can't graft an orange tree with an olive tree. It ain't gonna work. All right, it has to be of the same gene. All right, in order for it to be grafted in. So though those that were grafted back in and that were brought back in were actually Israelites. So with that, hey, I hope that this lesson was edifying. Call Loyimla Yahweh Bashmi Awashai. A double honors to our apostles and elders at Great Millstone who taught us the truth and who rule well. Peace, love, salutations, and mercy be unto the elect. A shalom.